They called it the Silence Era, not because there was peace, but because there was nothing left to scream. The galaxy had bled itself dry. Empires crumbled into dust, alliances snapped like brittle bones, and entire civilizations vanished in clouds of ash and static. The war hadn't started with Earth, but somehow Earth ended up in the center of it. As usual, no one asked humanity's permission before turning its skies red and its oceans black. At first, humans fought with the rest of the United Front, a coalition of 12 alien species trying to hold the line against the Krek Dominion. But that alliance shattered when the Krek offered something no one could refuse: survival for betrayal. One by one, Earth's so-called allies turned their guns inward. They called it strategic withdrawal. What it really was? Abandonment. No one came back for Earth. That was 5 years ago. Now the only known human vessel left was a scavenged warship, barely held together by stolen tech, old Earth metal, and spite. The Revenant, built out of scrap, rage, and the bones of Earth's last orbital fleet. She wasn't pretty, but she didn't need to be. She needed to kill. Captain Bren was her commander, not by rank. That didn't mean much after the fall, but because no one else was mean enough, mad enough, or broken enough to keep the crew alive. He wasn't some square-jawed, hopeful speechmaker either. The man had one eye, a half-metal jaw, and a back covered in knife scars from his time in a Varnox prison pit. He'd lost his entire squad when the Alliance betrayed Earth. Since then, he trusted no one. Not even the crew that still followed him. The crew was barely more than a handful: former soldiers, deserters, engineers, and killers. Each of them carried ghosts, burned colonies, dead families, destroyed cities. The kind of pain that hardens into hate. They weren't heroes. They weren't looking to save humanity. That dream died with the last Earth city that got glassed. They were hunting payback, and now, finally, they had a target. A Krek relay ship had gone dark near the ruins of the Saron Belt. Intelligence said it was transporting a prototype, something experimental, something dangerous. Normally, Bren wouldn't have cared, but the word prototype made his trigger finger twitch. Maybe it was a weapon. Maybe it was just Krek garbage. Either way, it was something they could use, and they needed everything they could get. When the Revenant dropped out of slipspace, what they saw confirmed their instincts. The Krek relay ship was floating, crippled, its hull split open like a broken rib cage. No distress signals, no escape pods, just silence. Too quiet. Bren stared at the tactical screen, chewing the inside of his cheek like he always did before something ugly. Scan for life, engine's hot, no one leaves. If this thing's a trap, we spring it our way. One of the crew, Talon, a cyber-rigged combat tech with burned lungs, replied in his raspy tone. No life signs, no power spikes, no activity. Another crewman, Raoul, the last surviving pilot from the Earth's Mars fleet, spoke up. Captain, something tore this ship open from the inside. You want to go in anyway? Bren didn't even blink. Yeah, strap up. As the boarding team loaded into the dropship, tension hung thick in the air. Nobody said it. But everyone thought it. This mission felt wrong. They'd raided dozens of ships. This one felt off, like it was watching them back. The docking clamp groaned as they connected with the Krek vessel. The lights inside flickered like dying fireflies. Blood, or whatever green-black sludge passed for Krek blood, painted the walls. Weapons were melted. Armor was shredded. Something had gone through this crew like they were paper. They moved slowly, weapons drawn. Talon led with his thermal lens. Movement, corridor left, something still alive. They turned the corner, ready to fire. But what they found wasn't Krek. It was human. Or at least it used to be. Naked, scarred, eyes wide open but empty. The man, if it was still a man, sat hunched against the wall, surrounded by dead Krek. Dozens of them. All slaughtered with bare hands. Bren stepped forward, weapon raised. "Who the hell are you?" The man looked up slowly. His voice was a whisper. "They tried to make me a weapon." Then he smiled, wide, broken, and cold. "But they forgot I was already human." No one spoke for a long time. The man on the floor, or whatever version of a man was left, sat drenched in Krek gore, arms limp at his sides, like he wasn't even aware of what he'd done. The bodies around him told a different story. Broken bones, clawed throats, crushed skulls. Not one clean kill. This wasn't war. It was butchery. Bren stared, unmoving, weapon still trained on the man's head. "Identify yourself." The stranger blinked slowly. "I don't remember my name." "Bullshit." "I'm not lying," the man rasped. "I remember Earth. I remember being taken. I remember pain. And screaming. But names? They stopped mattering after the second year." Talon swept the corridor with his rifle, unease written all over his face. "Captain, we've got a ghost in here. Krek don't die easy. Not even one-on-one. What kind of human does this without gear?" "Not a human," Raoul muttered. "Not anymore." Bren stepped closer, just out of reach, but within range for a kill shot. "You said they tried to make you a weapon. How?" The stranger didn't answer immediately. He looked down at his own hands like he was seeing them for the first time. "Implants, biomods, neural pain suppression. They kept running tests, injected me with Krek DNA. Said it was for combat resilience. I broke a guard's neck on day 132. They stopped feeding me solid food after that, said chewing was a waste of energy." He paused. They were right. I didn't need it anymore. That last sentence sent a ripple down everyone's spine. Not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. No emotion, no pride, no anger. Just the same tone you'd use to talk about weather. Bren lowered his weapon slightly. "And the prototype? The experimental tech? That why this ship's so dead?" The stranger laughed, or tried to. It came out like a dry cough full of iron and old dust. "I was the prototype," Talon cursed under his breath. "They turned a human into a Krek weapon system." "No," Bren said, eyes narrowing. "They turned him into the kill switch." That realization sunk in like a knife to the gut. The Krek hadn't been transporting a device. They were moving a project. Something they couldn't control, couldn't contain, and now couldn't escape. Bren looked at the carnage around them, the torn bodies, the melted walls. The evidence wasn't just in the kills, it was in how deliberate it all looked. Controlled fury, tactical slaughter. Not random. This wasn't a rampage. It was a statement. And now the man who made it was staring at Bren like he wanted to know what came next. "You planning to kill me?" the stranger asked. "That would be fair." Raoul lifted his rifle again. "Should have left you rotting in Krek steel." Bren held up a hand. "No, not yet." "Why not?" Talon snapped. "You trust this thing?" "I don't trust anyone." Bren looked back at the man on the floor. "But I do know this. The Krek spent years trying to turn a human into a monster, and now they've lost control of their pet." He reached into his coat, pulled out a rations bar, and tossed it toward the stranger. "Welcome to the losing team." The man caught the bar without looking, tore it open with blood-stained fingers, and devoured it like an animal. That's when the alarms started screaming on both ships. "Captain! Slipstream signatures! Multiple!" Talon barked. Raoul spun to the viewport. 3 Krek destroyers incoming. They must have been tracking this vessel. Of course, the Revenant wasn't invisible. and the Krek never leave their experiments unguarded for long. Bren tapped his comm. "All hands, get ready to pull us out. Talon, Raoul, back to the shuttle. Bring him." Raoul hesitated. "You're taking him aboard?" "We need every weapon we can find, even if it eats rations like a dog." The stranger smiled through blood-smeared teeth. "I don't eat humans, unless they betray me." Talon muttered, "Yeah, he's gonna be real fun at dinner." They moved fast. Boarding crews dropped back into the shuttle with practiced precision. The stranger didn't speak again, just moved silently, watching everything, soaking in the ship like he was remembering a world he once knew. Back aboard the Revenant, the crew braced for pursuit. The ship groaned under pressure as the Krek destroyers closed in, their signatures flaring hotter and faster than expected. The enemy didn't want a skirmish. They wanted blood. "Engine room!" Bren shouted. "Give me full burn on all drives!" "Aye, Captain!" The Revenant screamed into space like a dying bird flapping its last wings. Lasers lit up the void. A glancing shot tore into their port-side armor. Sparks flew. Gravity stuttered. The stranger stood in the corner of the bridge, watching silently. Raoul cursed as another hit jolted the ship. "We're not going to make it at this rate." Then the stranger stepped forward. "I can give you 12 seconds. Bren turned. "What?" 12 seconds. That's how long I can keep them blind if you let me link into your comms system. It'll burn out half your sensors." Bren didn't ask what he meant. He just nodded. "Do it." Talon rushed over. "Are you insane? He's gonna fry the whole ship." "We're dead in 30 seconds if we don't jump. Let him try." The stranger walked to the main console, placed both hands on it. The lights dimmed. Sparks danced across his arms. And then everything went quiet. The Krek ships stopped firing. Sensors went dark. "Now!" Bren barked. The Revenant punched through slipspace, shields flickering, hull screaming, every bolt threatening to rip apart. Then, silence. Cold, quiet space. No pursuit. They were gone. The crew slowly exhaled, except for Bren. He turned to the stranger. "Name or no name, I need something to call you." The man shrugged. "I used to be Subject Zero, but that's a Krek name, so no." "Then pick one, or I will." He looked up. "Call me what I am." "And what's that?" He smiled. Not cruel, not smug, just tired. "Ghost." Bren nodded. "Fine. Welcome to the Revenant, Ghost." That night the ship ran silent. The crew didn't talk much. Half of them didn't trust Ghost. The other half were terrified of him. But Bren, he saw something different. This wasn't just a survivor. This was a weapon the Krek had made with all their cruelty, then lost because they forgot one thing. Humans break differently, and when we break, we don't crack. We shatter outward. Later, in the war room, Bren reviewed data from the Krek ship. Talon had managed to scrape partial logs before the system melted. Most of it was gibberish in Krek code. But one thing stuck. Project Harrow. Human-born. Terminated. False. The Krek hadn't just lost Ghost. They feared him, and they were hunting him. That made things more complicated, but it also gave Bren an idea. A dangerous, insane, suicidal idea. "What if we stop running?" he said aloud, half to himself. Raoul, seated across the table, looked up. "Say again?" Bren leaned forward, eyes burning. "They want him back. They're scared of what he's become. What if we let him off the chain?" Raoul stared. "You're talking about turning him into a weapon?" "No," Bren said. "I'm talking about showing the galaxy what happens when humanity gets pushed too far." The crew wasn't built for grand campaigns. They were barely alive, but with Ghost, they had something else. They had fear. The Krek feared him. That meant they could be manipulated, distracted, maybe even fractured. War wasn't about fighting anymore. Not for Earth. It was about hurting them back. Bren left the war room and found Ghost alone in the observation deck, watching the stars. "You ever want revenge?" he asked. Ghost didn't look away. Want is too small a word. Bren nodded slowly. "I'm planning a hit. Big one. Krek warlords gather near the Stralium Rift every solar cycle. A ritual. Boring political crap." Ghost was quiet. Bren continued. "We hit that convoy. We send a message. Not that humans are back, that we never left." Finally, Ghost spoke. "Let me go in first." Bren raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" Ghost looked at him. "I was made to be their monster." Time they remembered why they should have killed me when they had the chance. The Stralium Rift wasn't on any commercial star maps. It wasn't a travel lane, a trade route, or even a safe passage. It was a fracture in space, raw and violent, where gravitational waves twisted like serpents through asteroid fields and dead moons. But once a cycle, the Krek elite gathered there, cloaked in ritual and arrogance, to honor their oldest warlords. They thought it was untouchable. That's what made it perfect. Bren stood before the Revenant's warboard, a shattered hologram with more dead zones than working parts. Ghost stood beside him, his eyes blank, arms folded, watching the flickering dots mark Krek ships and projected paths. His body was still scarred, some of the wounds never fully closed, like they refused to heal just to remind him of what he was. "You sure about this?" Raoul asked, lighting a cigarette with shaky fingers. "There's going to be 8 destroyers, at minimum. Maybe more. We're throwing rocks at tanks." Bren didn't turn from the board. "We're not throwing rocks. We're throwing a ghost." The others didn't laugh. No one smiled. They all knew it wasn't a metaphor. Bren planned to drop Ghost directly into the enemy's ceremonial docking cradle before the rest of the Revenant moved into range. It was suicide, unless Ghost was what they suspected, something more than human now, something that didn't die easy. The plan was ugly. Get in, hit hard, bleed them, vanish. Not victory, just pain, because pain left scars, and scars carried memory. Ghost stared at the map like he was reliving old ones. "They'll have ceremonial guards, but they won't be combat ready. Not during the marking." "The what?" Talon asked. "It's a ritual. Krek don't just honor the dead. They relive them, eat the memories of past warriors through flesh and bioechoes. That's why they gather. To feed their rage." "Freaks," Raoul muttered. Ghost nodded. "Yes, but even freaks let their guard down when they're dreaming of dead gods." Bren slapped the console. "Then we wake 'em up with fire." The crew split into assignments. Engines, shields, tactical loadouts. Ghost didn't need gear, no armor, no rifle. Just a drop pod and a simple injection to stabilize his vitals long enough to survive the G-force descent through the rift's gravity swell. As they prepped, Ghost sat alone in the ship's empty medbay. He didn't speak. He didn't ask for updates. He just stared at the blank wall, his chest rising and falling slowly. Bren entered, closing the door behind him. "You've done this before." Ghost didn't look at him. "No, I lived it before. That's different." Bren leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You ever wonder if there's anything left in you that isn't a weapon?" Ghost finally turned his head. His eyes were dull. Not broken. Worse than that. Empty. "Sometimes I wonder if I even started as a man." "That's bullshit," Bren said coldly. "I've seen weapons. They don't hesitate. You do. You think. That's what makes you dangerous to them." Ghost looked down at his hands again. "They spent 3 years trying to make me stop thinking. And they failed. That's why you're here. The drop timer activated across the ship. T-1 hour. Ghost stood up. If I don't make it back, burn the rift. Don't wait. Don't retrieve. Bren shook his head. I'm not coming back for you out of sentiment. I'm coming back because if we leave your body in their hands, they'll rebuild the program. That made Ghost pause. Then bring explosives, lots of them. As the crew loaded the drop pod, the ship entered silent run. All lights dimmed. External heat signatures dampened. The Revenant approached the rift like a ghost of its own, riding the edge of sensor range and gravitational distortion. The pod was cramped. Metal walls, a recycled oxygen tank. No interface, just a red light that blinked faster the closer it got to launch. Ghost sat in the pod, strapped in, arms on his legs, staring ahead like a soldier walking to a noose. Raoul's voice crackled in over the intercom. Pod launch in 10 seconds. Target vector locked. Bren's voice followed. Good hunting. Ghost smiled faintly. Then the red light turned solid. The pod ejected like a bullet from a barrel. No sound, no ceremony. Just the black. Inside, Ghost felt the heat rise. The air grow thick. His body tried to convulse, but the injections held his nervous system down like chains. The rift's energy bent around him, dragging the pod through the broken vacuum of twisted space. And then, impact. The pod punched through a Krek destroyer's outer hull like a hammer through glass. It embedded into the docking structure, half ritual hall, half military gate. The Krek never stood a chance. Ghost ripped open the pod's side and stepped into the hall barefoot, unarmed, shirtless, dripping in coolant and blood. Krek warriors, dressed in ceremonial bone armor, turned in confusion. Most didn't react in time. He moved like wind through fire, elbows shattered throats, knees broke ribs, hands crushed skulls. He didn't roar, he didn't speak, he dismantled them limb by limb. The first 15 died in under a minute. The next wave came armed. Ghost tore a blade from a dead Krek and hurled it like a spear through 2 soldiers. Another charged him, plasma rifle glowing. Ghost used the corpse of one enemy as a shield, then snapped the shooter's neck before he hit the ground. Blood coated the floor. Screams echoed. Sirens began to wail. But Ghost moved forward, deeper, toward the central chamber, the Hall of Remembrance, where the highest warlords sat in communion, drinking memory from the skulls of their ancestors. They didn't expect an attack, not during the marking, not from a human. The security was minimal. Tradition outweighed paranoia. So when Ghost burst through the ceremonial doors, he saw surprise in the eyes of a dozen Krek nobles. Surprise turned to confusion. Then confusion turned to fear. He stepped forward slowly, one foot dragging, arms hanging low, like he wasn't even human anymore. Just a shade, hollow and deadly. One of the nobles stood. Hanavek Tolrashk. Ghost didn't wait for the translation. He moved. The battle wasn't clean. It was ugly, brutal, desperate. Ghost took hits, plasma to the shoulder, a blade to the thigh. But he didn't stop. Pain meant nothing now. Each scream, each gurgling breath from a dying Krek filled the room with panic. They'd turned him into death incarnate. And now he had come home. Meanwhile, above the rift, the Revenant dropped out of stealth. Bren didn't wait for orders. All batteries, fire everything. Target command vessels, no warnings. Missiles lit up space. Pulse cannons roared. The rift turned into a graveyard of light and smoke. Krek ships scrambled to respond, but their comms were shattered. Confusion reigned. Talon cursed as plasma burst past the hull. Shields at 30%. We can't take much more. Hold, Bren barked. Below, Ghost activated the implant in his neck. A beacon, a signal. Talon's console lit up. "He's alive! The pod's still transmitting!" Raoul yelled from the helm. "Then what the hell are we waiting for? Get us down there!" The Revenant dipped toward the rift's gravitational edge, fire spraying in every direction. Shrapnel tore past. A Krek frigate clipped their rear thrusters. But Bren didn't blink. They reached the breach. The bay where Ghost had landed was ruined. Walls collapsed, the floor soaked in black ichor. Dozens of Krek bodies lay scattered. Most were unrecognizable. And in the middle of it all, Ghost, barely standing, covered in blood, breathing in heaves, one eye swollen shut. He looked up as the shuttle doors opened. Bren stepped out, rifle drawn. He didn't say a word, just walked to Ghost, pulled him to his feet, and handed him a new shirt. "You make a damn mess," Ghost coughed. "I hate ceremonies." Raoul stared at the room in horror. "How the hell are you still standing?" Ghost didn't answer. He just turned and walked onto the shuttle. As the Revenant pulled back into space, the rift burned behind them. The Krek were scattered, wounded, humiliated. For the first time in years, they ran, and across the galaxy. The message was clear. Earth wasn't dead. It had just stopped playing fair. The rift burned for 2 solar days. What remained of the Krek ceremonial fleet drifted in pieces, some leaking reactor plasma, others completely dark. Scavenger bots picked the ruins like vultures, fighting over scraps that no longer mattered. The warlords were dead. Ghost had ensured that personally. Not one left breathing. No hostages. No survivors. And now, for the first time since Earth fell, someone else in the galaxy bled. The Revenant floated just outside a dead zone, licking its wounds. Internal systems were failing. Shields were fried. 2 of the crew were recovering from plasma burns, and Raoul had a concussion from the rift's turbulence. But they were alive. They were alive. Inside the medbay, Bren watched Ghost through a one-way screen. He hadn't moved in 7 hours. Not since they pulled him off the shuttle, half-conscious and soaked in dried blood. He sat shirtless, hands limp in his lap, staring at the floor like something inside him had finally cracked. Talon entered, his face tight. Blood tests came back. "And?" "He's shutting down." Bren looked up. "What do you mean, shutting down?" "I mean the Krek shit inside him. The biomods, neural dampeners, the cell regeneration, it's collapsing. Whatever he did in that chamber pushed his body past its limits. The implants can't stabilize anymore." Bren leaned on the console, jaw clenched. "How long?" Talon hesitated. "Weeks, maybe days. He's cooked, Captain. He's not a weapon anymore. He's a countdown." The silence between them felt like a funeral. Bren didn't answer right away, just stared at the screen. At the man who had torn through one of the most sacred Krek sites in the galaxy and walked away like it meant nothing, and now sat, dying alone, without a word. Raoul's voice buzzed over the comm. "Captain, you better get up here. We've got incoming." Bren didn't ask questions. He left the medbay and headed for the bridge. The screen showed a strange formation. 4 ships. Human signatures. Old Earth tech. Battered, retrofitted with stolen parts and patched armor. No national flags. No registration. Merc ships. "Identify," Bren ordered. "They're broadcasting open band," Raoul said. "Non-aggression ping." Bren frowned. "Put them through." The holoscreen flickered, revealing a man with a shaved head and one mechanical arm. His voice was smooth. Too smooth. "Captain of the Revenant, greetings. My name is Auric. I command the independent vessel Witchglass." Bren didn't blink. "State your business." You made waves at the rift, Oryx said. Big ones, enough to make old enemies nervous, and old allies curious. I don't have allies, Bren said. Then maybe we change that. Oryx leaned forward, eyes sharp. You've done the impossible. You struck the Krek and lived. That makes you valuable, dangerous. It also makes you a target. The Dominion will retaliate, but not immediately. They're regrouping, recalculating. And while they do, you have a window. Bren narrowed his eyes. A window for what? To take something from them, Oryx said. A map. A relic. Doesn't matter what they call it. Point is, it's information. Coordinates to their deepest vaults, their weapons labs, their breeding worlds. Stuff even their warlords don't access without ceremony. And you know where it is? I do, Oryx said, but I don't have the firepower to get there. You do. Bren was quiet for a long time. Then he said, We're not mercs. Oryx smiled. No, you're ghosts, just like the thing you keep locked in your medbay. That made Bren pause. How do you know about Ghost? Everyone knows, Oryx said. The rift wasn't silent. Half the Dominion heard the screams from that chamber echo across quantum bands. You didn't just win a fight, you lit a fire, and now the Krek are hunting for the one thing that scares them, your man. Bren's jaw tightened. He's not for trade. I'm not asking for him, Oryx said. I'm offering something else, something you need. A chance to finish what he started, to hit them where it hurts. Really hurts. The signal dropped. Bren stared at the empty screen, then turned to Raoul and Talon. Track those coordinates. Prep for a jump. Raoul raised an eyebrow. You trust this guy? No, Bren said. But I trust patterns, and the Krek pattern is survival through control. If we scared them, they'll circle their wagons, which means whatever this vault is, it matters. He headed for the med bay. Ghost hadn't moved. Bren pulled up a chair and sat across from him. You're dying. Ghost blinked slowly. I know. How long? Not long. Silence again. Then Bren said, You want to finish this? Ghost looked up. Finish what? What they started. That finally got a reaction. Ghost's expression shifted. Barely, but enough. A flicker of something that wasn't pain, wasn't rage, just purpose. I'm listening. Bren laid out the plan. They'd jump to the coordinates Oryx provided, infiltrate a Krek data vault buried inside a rogue moon, a floating fortress protected by automated systems and living AI guards. No diplomacy, no tricks. A smash-and-grab mission for a piece of information the Krek didn't want anyone seeing. Ghost nodded slowly. I'll need a containment suit, he said. The atmosphere in those vaults is poison. Talon appeared at the door. We've got one. Barely. It was welded from 2 different marine kits and half a mining rig. Won't last more than an hour. Ghost stood. Then we don't need longer than that. The jump to the rogue moon was violent. The ship screamed as it bent through a gravitational field, then snapped into real space like a broken rib popping back in place. The moon was massive, jagged and sharp, like a frozen wound in space. Satellite weapons flanked it, but most were offline. They'd been through here recently, or someone had cleared the path. This stinks, Raoul muttered. We're walking into something. Doesn't matter, Bren said. We walk anyway. The shuttle dropped fast. Stealth mode engaged. They landed in a narrow trench along the moon's northern ridge. Ghost, suited and armed only with a shock gauntlet and a blade, led the way. They cut through 2 patrols, robotic sentries with Krek AI brains wired into old battle droids. Quick, ugly fights. Ghost moved like his pain had vanished. But Bren knew better. He saw the slight tremors, the moments where Ghost's foot dragged just a little too long. Inside the vault, the walls pulsed. Organic tech. Alive. Bren felt like they'd stepped inside the ribs of a creature long dead, but still twitching. Talon hacked a terminal. "Give me a minute." They didn't have a minute. The floor groaned. Lights changed. The vault recognized them. And then the AI spoke, not in Krek, but in English. "You should not be here, Ghost." Bren froze. "It knows him?" Ghost stood still. "They used my brain to map early language ciphers. That voice, that's me, before the lab, before the experiments." The AI voice continued, warped and cold. "You were meant to serve, not rebel. You were meant to break the enemy, not become one." "I am the enemy," Ghost said. Talon pulled the data core. "Got it." "Move," Bren shouted. The vault responded. Walls shifted. Turrets opened. Mechanical limbs broke free from the ceiling, long and thin, like spider legs made of bone and wire. They ran, through fire, through collapsing halls, through a past that wouldn't die. Ghost took point, slamming through doors, punching down AI drones. His suit cracked. Air leaked. Blood smeared the visor. But he didn't stop. They made it to the shuttle, lifted off under fire, the data core in hand. As the Revenant jumped back into slipspace, Ghost collapsed on the floor of the cargo bay, coughing up blood, hands shaking. Bren knelt beside him. "You still with me?" Ghost smiled weakly. "Did we get it?" "We got it." "Then I'm still with you." Bren nodded, gripping his shoulder. But in the back of his mind, he knew. Ghost wouldn't survive the next run, which meant whatever was on that data core had to count. The war room of the Revenant was darker than usual, like the ship itself could feel what was coming. The data core sat in the center of the table, pulsing, organic, alive. It wasn't just tech. It was Krek-grown intelligence, designed to think, record, adapt. They hadn't cracked it yet. Talon had been working non-stop for 6 hours with neural gloves and 3 backup power links. It kept rejecting Earth code, as if it hated the species trying to force it open. Ghost sat in silence, a blanket thrown over his shoulders, legs stretched out, skin pale. He hadn't spoken much since the mission. The bleeding hadn't stopped completely, and his body was losing the fight faster than expected. A part of him seemed disconnected now, like he was more ghost than man, and everyone else was just catching up to the fact. Raoul stood at the side, arms folded. "Whatever's in there better be worth it. We lost 2 drones, nearly cooked the shuttle, and he nodded at Ghost, nearly died again." Talon finally exhaled. "I've got something." Visual, data trace, playback logs, decrypted partials. He pressed a key. The room flickered. A projection burst to life. First, a map, wide and brutal. It stretched across the outer systems of Krek territory. Dots, paths, attack lines, every one of them red. "War plans?" Raoul asked. Talon shook his head. "Not just that. These are retrospective movements, not strategies. Reports from 20 years ago." Bren narrowed his eyes. "Go deeper." The screen zoomed in. One red path in particular stood out, jagged, erratic, and direct. It led straight to Earth. Raoul leaned forward. "That's the primary fleet that glassed our atmosphere." "Correct," Talon said grimly. "But here's the part that matters." He keyed another command. Overlaid on the path was a signal pattern. Small, rhythmic, human, military, encoded in Terran Alliance frequency. Raoul's face twisted. "Wait, are you saying—" "It was a beacon," Talon said, "from inside Earth's moon base, a military-grade relay that sent out our orbital defense grid codes 2 days before the Krek arrived. It was how they got past us." No, Raoul said, backing up. "That was shut down. Decommissioned after the Luna riots. I remember. I was stationed at Mars Command. They said it was abandoned. They lied, Bren said quietly. Someone gave the Krek a back door. Ghost raised his head slowly. A betrayal. Talon turned toward him. From someone high enough to access secure command logs. This wasn't just sabotage, this was sanctioned. Bren didn't speak for a long time. He stared at the projection like it was mocking him. I knew it, he finally said. I always knew something wasn't right about how fast they took Earth. How clean it was. They didn't even hit most of the resistance pockets. They avoided them, like they knew exactly what to bypass. Ghost looked down. We didn't fall. We were sold. Why? Raoul asked. What the hell do they gain from that? Selling Earth to a bunch of monsters? Talon clicked through more logs, decrypting as fast as he could. Finally, a voice crackled through the speaker, warped, glitchy, but human. We offer the Krek our world in exchange for survival of the human species. Controlled relocation, manageable subjugation. It's the only path forward. The voice was old, calm, bureaucratic. Raoul flinched. That's Admiral Travers. Ghost's hands clenched. Travers. He was the one who gave the order to abandon Earth's colonies. The one who ordered the evacuation of the Outer Ring, leaving millions behind. The man who vanished just before Earth's final blackout. Play it all, Bren said. The log continued. Earth's resistance is emotional, not strategic. Our people are built on delusion. We think we're dominant because we've survived. But survival without control is chaos. The Krek offer structure. Brutal, yes, but predictable. And predictability can be used. There was silence in the room. Then the log ended with one last line. Sacrifice one world. Save the species. Bren's fist slammed the table. They didn't think we were worth fighting for. They decided for us. Raoul walked away, rubbing his face. This is worse than betrayal. It's genocide with the signature. Talon looked up. There's more. He brought up another screen, internal Krek research logs, file names in alien glyphs, but one name came through in English. Subject series. Zero Ghost stood, his body shaking. Open it. Talon hesitated. You sure? Do it. The log played. It showed footage from a Krek biolab. Dark halls, steel tables, screaming. A man, barely recognizable as Ghost, strapped down, muscles twitching, skin covered in injection lines. A Krek handler paced around him, speaking in low tones. Testing resilience at 10% above tolerable threshold. Subject continues to resist neural rewrites. Memory degradation incomplete. Suggest biological reinforcement through trauma recall. Another clip. Ghost in a cage. Surrounded by corpses. None of them alien. Human corpses. Someone had dropped dead prisoners into his cell. Left him there for days. Then came back with notes. Refuses cannibal adaptation. Displays signs of psychological resistance. Subject remains human. The footage ended. Ghost didn't say a word. He just turned around and walked out of the room. No one followed at first. But Bren eventually did. He found him in the ship's lowest deck, where the lights flickered and the engines hummed like a dying heart. Ghost stood shirtless, staring at the wall. They tried to kill what made me human, he said. But they couldn't. No, Bren said. They didn't break you. But you saw what they did. You saw what I became. I did. Ghost looked at him. And you still trust me? Bren leaned on the wall beside him. I don't need to trust you. I just need you to be real. And you're the realest thing I've seen in this damned war. Ghost smiled. Barely. There's more to that data. Travers didn't act alone. He had supporters, a council, humans, political, military, economic. They're still out there, hidden, profiting. Then we find them, Bren said, one by one. I'm dying, Bren. Then we go faster. Ghost chuckled. You know, they called me a ghost because I wasn't supposed to exist. Just a whisper in their files. A failed experiment. And now? Now I'm the echo that won't stop screaming. Bren stepped away. Get ready. We're going hunting. He returned to the war room. Prep the Corps for a data burst. We're sending the Trevor's logs to every outer colony that still has comms. Raoul looked up. That's suicide. No, Bren said. That's truth. Let the galaxy see what the Krek did, and who helped them. And when they come for us? Bren smirked. We've already died once. What are they going to do? Kill us again? The Revenant rumbled beneath their feet. Somewhere deep inside. The ship seemed to wake up, creaking, groaning, like it understood. A ghost ship, crewed by survivors, led by the weapon they couldn't kill, and now they had names, targets, coordinates. The next war wasn't about survival. It was about revenge. The Revenant wasn't a warship. It wasn't even a proper vessel by military standards anymore. Just a haunted thing held together by bolts, blood, and memories. But now it had purpose. Clear. Vicious. And the kind of purpose that didn't care who got burned along the way. The data leak had already reached the colonies. Every broadcast channel that still functioned, every outlaw relay, pirate transmission, abandoned military outpost, lit up with the same message. Earth didn't fall. Earth was traded. The voiceover was simple. Ghost's voice, slow and flat, laid bare the evidence. Audio from Admiral Trevor's, logs of Krek human negotiations, even footage of the first orbital codes being sent out from Luna Command. No music, no propaganda, just truth, stripped and ugly, and the galaxy lost its mind. Riots erupted in the Terran border sectors. Former Alliance members, those who had either turned their backs or surrendered early, started scrambling to justify their betrayals. Others, especially the humans who'd escaped Earth's destruction, began forming militia cells, ragged little packs of fury and desperation. But Bren didn't care about rebellions. Not yet. He had names, coordinates, and at the top of the list was one man, Arlen Fass, former deputy director of the Earth-Mars Strategic Defense Coalition, retired in secret 6 months before the fall. Slipped into hiding under the protection of a private syndicate on the outer rim of Kira's End, a planet technically independent, but crawling with ex-military contractors and silent mercenary groups. Arlen Fass hadn't spoken publicly in 10 years, and now Ghost wanted him first. The atmosphere on Kira's End felt wrong the second the Revenant entered orbit. The planet was a swamp world with floating city platforms stitched together by rusted metal and economic slavery. No flags, no allegiance, just power, bought in blood and fear. Raoul docked the shuttle with practiced hands, every bump a reminder that the Revenant's undercarriage was one missile away from failure. As they touched down, the landing zone filled with stale smoke and the smell of diesel rot. Bren, Raoul, Talon, and Ghost stepped out into the grime. Ghost wore a heavy cloak, hiding the damage his body no longer masked. Every step seemed heavier now. His joints clicked, his breath rasped, but his eyes burned with the same fire that lit the rift on the day he walked through Krek royalty like a reaper. Talon scanned the crowd as they moved through the metal streets. "Too many eyes," he muttered. Raoul grunted. "They know we're not here to drink." "They know he's here," Bren said, nodding toward Ghost. "Word got out. The galaxy's whispering." A child ran past, dirty face smeared with oil. She stopped and stared at Ghost. "You're the one from the rift," she said, voice full of something between fear and awe. Ghost didn't speak. He just stared back, and the girl ran off into the haze. They found Fass in a tower on the edge of the platform, one of those polished places pretending not to be a fortress. It was all chrome and glass on the surface, but sensor jammers and gun nests lined the upper floors. The lobby was quiet. Too quiet. Raoul broke the silence. "Place is bait," Bren nodded. "We're not here to sneak. We're here to make a point." They walked through the front doors like they owned the place. The first wave hit them in the elevator shaft. 2 mercs with plasma rifles and reflex boosters. Talon dropped the first with a stun blade to the throat. Ghost didn't draw a weapon for the second. He just stepped into the shot, took the plasma bolt in the side, and broke the merc's neck with one hand. His cloak sizzled from the heat. He didn't flinch. They rose in silence. At the top floor, they found Arlen Fass seated behind a wall of transparasteel, a drink in his hand, looking out over the city like he was watching ants fight over garbage. He turned slowly when they entered. "Captain Bren," he said calmly. "And the infamous Ghost. I expected you sooner." Bren raised his sidearm. "Don't speak like you're important. You were a pencil pusher with a death toll." Fass sighed. "I'm a realist. Earth was doomed. We had no unity, no direction. The Krek offered order." "They offered slavery," Ghost said, voice hollow. "And what did you offer, Subject Zero? Chaos? A world that eats itself alive for pride?" Fass stood slowly. "I made a deal that saved lives." "You didn't save lives," Bren growled. "You saved yours." Ghost stepped forward. Fass' voice changed, sharp, disgusted. "You're not even human anymore. You're just the failed experiment they couldn't flush fast enough." Ghost removed his cloak. Let Fass see the scars, the metal under his skin. The bones that weren't quite right anymore. The faint glow from his ribs where Krek tech still pulsed like a second heart. "You made this," Ghost whispered. "You built the lab, approved the project. You signed the death orders for the others." Fass flinched. "Do it then," he spat. "Be what they made you. Kill me. I'm just one old man." Ghost stepped closer. "That's the problem. You're only one." He didn't break Fass's neck. He crushed it. No elegance, no ceremony. Just the brutal, ugly force of a man who'd held back for too long. The body slumped to the floor, leaking blood and spit. The room went quiet. Raoul didn't speak. Talon just stared at the wall. Bren holstered his weapon. "He got off easy." The message went out the next hour. A video. Short, sharp. Arlen Fass's corpse, throat snapped, eyes still open, and Ghost's voice, soft and cold. "One down. Every name on that list is next. You sold Earth. Now we collect." By the time they reached orbit again, the planet was in flames. Merc factions turned on each other. Someone bombed Fass's old bunker. Half the syndicate went underground. The message was working. Fear was spreading. But so was something else. Ghost collapsed 2 days later. He hit the deck hard. Blood spilled from his mouth. His left eye stopped blinking. His pulse was erratic. The Krek implants, once welded into his nervous system, were now feeding corrupted signals to his brain. Talon stabilized him. Barely. He was conscious, but only just. In the medbay, Bren sat beside him, silent. Ghost struggled to speak. "You need to finish this." "You're not done yet," Bren said. Ghost shook his head. "I know what's coming. The shutdown. I can feel it. My hands don't feel like hands anymore. Just wait." Bren looked at the floor. "We'll find a way to slow it down." "There is no slowing it down. There's just choosing where I burn." He looked up with those broken, tired eyes. "I want the last name on that list. Trevor's." Bren nodded slowly. "Then that's where we go." They sat in silence again. Just the hum of the ship, the creak of metal, the soft rhythm of a dying man's breath. Then Ghost whispered, "When this is over, I want no graves, no speeches." "You won't get either," Bren said. "You'll be a legend, the kind they tell their kids to scare them straight." Ghost smiled faintly. "Good." The hunt wasn't over. But the end was coming. And now every enemy left knew what was coming for them. Justice wasn't a system anymore. It was a man with broken bones and fire in his chest. There were only 3 names left. The data core had given them everything: access routes, private logs, shell corporations, and black site sanctuaries. But among them, one stood above the rest. The man who'd signed the surrender order. The man whose voice had delivered Earth's death sentence, Admiral John Trevors. He wasn't just a traitor. He was the traitor. The one who orchestrated Earth's fall from the inside, who handed over military codes to the Krek, promised obedience in exchange for elite survival, and fled the system days before the first orbital strikes. He didn't just run. He hid. And now he lived like a ghost, surrounded by shields, mercenaries, AI security, and silence. But Revenant had tracked him down. Deep within the rimward bastion, a former Alliance citadel converted into an off-the-record Krek human sanctuary, hidden beneath the surface of a dying moon, orbiting a red dwarf. It had everything: cloaking fields, subspace distortion, anti-telemetry barriers. Getting in wasn't the problem. Getting out was. Trevors had surrounded himself with the last loyalists, former high command officers who still believed in his vision. To them, surrender was not betrayal. It was strategy, controlled extinction in the name of galactic peace. Ghost had other words for it: murder, cowardice, treason. The briefing room aboard Revenant was heavy with silence. Bren stood at the head of the table, pointing at a flickering holomap of the bastion. "This is a fortress," he said. 12 defense rings, 8 security tiers, 30 automated turrets, 36 soldiers, plus whatever mutated Krek-bred security they've cobbled together. And Trevors is buried beneath it all. Raoul folded his arms. "So what's the plan?" "There is no plan," Bren said. "There's only fire." Ghost sat quietly in the corner. He didn't wear armor anymore. It irritated the failing implants. His skin was pale, almost gray. His left hand trembled constantly now, fingers curling on their own. His eye was sunken. He hadn't eaten in 2 days, and yet no one questioned whether he was coming. They already knew. Bren turned to him. "You'll die in there." Ghost didn't answer, so Talon asked instead. "Why him? Why now? We could still send the data. Let the galaxy judge." Ghost slowly raised his head. "The galaxy doesn't have a spine." He stood. It took effort now. You could see the weight in every bone. "He made me this. He made Earth this. He doesn't get judged by history. He gets buried in it." They came in low, under the distortion net. No transmission, no warning, no declaration, just fury. Revenant slammed into the bastion's orbit like a cursed comet. Auto-defense systems screamed. Turrets spun to life. But by then it was too late. Bren had already launched the drop pod, and inside it were 4 people who had nothing left to lose. Ghost, Bren, Raoul, Talon. They landed in the lower hangar bay, hard. The pod shattered on impact, hurling sparks and smoke across the polished Krek metal floor. Alarms screamed. Automated sirens blared across the structure. Then came the soldiers. Bren moved first, cutting down the first pair with rifle bursts. Raoul followed, sweeping left. Talon hacked a security door mid-gunfight and redirected the kill drones into the ceiling. Ghost didn't run. He walked, through gunfire, through heat, through screams. A plasma bolt hit him in the side. He staggered, fell to one knee, but rose. Every step was heavier now, slower, but he didn't stop. Every enemy who tried to stand in front of him died screaming. They cut through the outer security tier in 11 minutes. The second took 20, with more injuries. Raoul caught a blade through the arm. Talon took a bullet to the ribs and still kept moving, blood soaking through his side. Bren's armor cracked from a grenade blast. And Ghost? He began to cough blood. His left eye was now completely blind. He couldn't feel his legs anymore. He just moved them on memory, on hate. When they reached the bastion's core, the AI systems activated. Dozens of humanoid shapes formed from Krek organic matter, experimental guards, fused from flesh and tech, programmed with combat reflexes stolen from Earth's greatest warriors. "Fall back," Bren ordered. "No," Ghost said. He moved forward, unarmed now, his gauntlet cracked, blade lost. The creatures swarmed him. He didn't scream. He didn't roar. He endured. He ripped them apart with what was left of his strength. Broke necks with hands that barely responded. Head-butted one until its skull collapsed. And when they finally dropped, Ghost collapsed with them. Bren reached him first. "Stay with me." Ghost looked up. His voice was barely audible. "Don't let him run. Not without you." Ghost coughed blood onto Bren's glove. "You know I can't climb anymore." "You don't have to," Bren said. "You've done enough." Ghost didn't respond, but he smiled. It was the ugliest, most beautiful thing Bren had ever seen. They found Trevor's in the command chamber. The man hadn't aged well, wrinkled, bloated, but still wearing that pristine white uniform, untouched by war or guilt. He turned when they entered, calmly raising a drink. "I suppose congratulations are in order," he said. Bren leveled his weapon. Trevor's chuckled. "You think this matters? You're just flies. History isn't changed by vengeance. It's built on vision." Raoul limped forward. "You call selling Earth a vision?" "I call it the only sane choice," Trevor's replied. "We couldn't beat the Krek. You know that. Even now, all you've done is inconvenience them." Bren's jaw clenched. "You don't get to explain. You get to pay." Trevor's tilted his head. "Then kill me. But you'll just be another forgotten rebel dying in a hole." Bren lowered the weapon slightly. "Not today." He stepped aside, and Ghost entered. No words, no speech. He walked into the room, dragging his ruined leg behind him, face twisted in pain. His breath came in ragged gasps. Trevor's took a step back. For the first time, fear. "Subject 0, Ghost stood in front of him. "You called me your greatest mistake." "I was wrong," Trevor said, voice trembling. "You were a success. You survived everything. You could lead humanity if you wanted." Ghost raised a shaking hand. "You don't speak for humanity." And with that, he drove his hand through Trevor's chest. No hesitation, no mercy. He pulled it back, bloodied, trembling. Trevor's collapsed. No last words. No redemption. Just death. They carried Ghost out of the bastion. Bren held his weight. Raoul covered the retreat. Talon reprogrammed the defense system to self-destruct. By the time they reached the shuttle, Ghost's eyes were glassy. His breath came in short gasps. He lay on the deck, staring up at the ceiling. "You got him," Bren said. Ghost nodded faintly. "Yeah. Feels like victory." "No," Ghost whispered. "Just balance." His eyes fluttered. "I remember my name now." Bren leaned in. "What was it?" But Ghost didn't answer. He just closed his eyes and exhaled. Long, silent, final. The bastion exploded behind them. Fire swallowed the moon. The Revenant drifted in silence for hours. No one spoke. No one moved. They didn't bury him. They didn't cremate him. They took what was left of him and released it into space, No speeches, no songs, just the final, broken man who had burned a hole through a corrupt galaxy and made even the monsters afraid. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but something had changed. And it started with one ghost. The galaxy didn't erupt overnight. There were no fireworks, no grand celebration, no thunderous declaration of victory. Just silence. The kind of silence that comes after a scream. The bastion's destruction was seen across 4 star systems, the flare of its final moments caught by long-range telescopes and pirate relays. Within hours, the footage of Trevor's corpse and Ghost's final words made their way into every corner of what was left of human space. No empire claimed responsibility, no alliance stepped forward, but the truth didn't need a flag. It just needed blood. The reaction was slow at first. The colonies stirred. Disjointed militias began to move, and then something started to change, not just in the systems that had been abandoned after Earth's fall, but in the Krek Dominion itself. They denied everything. They called Trevor's a rogue. They branded Ghost a myth, a malfunctioned bioasset corrupted by human weakness. But they were afraid. You could feel it. Their patrols increased. Their peace treaties reactivated. They started pulling their outlier forces inward, abandoning outer stations they once bragged about building. Whole sectors went dark, not from conquest, but from retreat. Because for the first time in decades, something had made the Krek bleed. And that something had a human face. Back aboard the Revenant, there was no ceremony. Ghost's remains were reduced to particles, scattered through the slipstream, carried by vacuum. The man who had once been Subject Zero, the Krek's greatest mistake, became nothing more than dust and memory. Just as he'd wanted. Bren stood alone in the observation deck, watching the stars bleed by like fading wounds. His reflection looked older than it should. The white in his beard had crept in faster. His jaw ached from clenching it too often. His hand still bore the scar from lifting Ghost out of the bastion. Talon entered without knocking. He wouldn't want a speech. Bren nodded. I'm not giving one. Raoul's asking about next steps. The crew's restless. Half of them think we're done. The other half think this is just the beginning. Bren didn't turn. They're both wrong. How's that? There's no done. There's no beginning. There's just what comes next. Talon sighed. You think they'll hunt us? Oh. They'll try, Bren said. The Krek want to forget him, but they won't. He's burned into their hierarchy now. He made them vulnerable. That kind of scar doesn't fade. What about the humans who still follow Trevor's ideology? His loyalists? They'll crawl out eventually. Someone always does. There's always another snake in the grass. Talon hesitated, then asked the question that had been hanging in the air for days. Was it worth it? Bren turned, finally, eyes hollow. No, and yes. He stepped forward, speaking not like a captain, but like a man who had buried too many good people in too many nameless stars. We lost Earth. We lost millions. Billions. We lost our culture, our cities, our damn sky. That doesn't come back. He looked toward the stars again. But what we took from them? That fear? That wound? That's permanent. Weeks passed. The Revenant became more than a ship. It became a myth. The crew moved carefully, hitting abandoned Krek outposts, liberating old Terran data caches, helping underground networks rebuild comms systems the Krek once buried. No banners, no calls for war, just action, quiet, brutal, effective. And always, the rumors followed. They say the Ghost walks again. He didn't die. He became something else. You hear what he did to Trevor's? Ripped his heart out with a dying hand. Bren never corrected them. He let the Ghost grow, because fear worked faster than hope. Raoul painted the ship's underbelly with Ghost's last words in blood-red letters: balance, not peace. It wasn't a motto, it was a warning to everyone. In the shadows of space, the world began to shift. Old enemies who had aligned with the Krek started disappearing. Former human officials who'd sold colonies, signed betrayal pacts, or served as collaborators found their homes reduced to ash. No mercy, no notes, just a message burned into walls and hulls. You were seen. Across the sectors, the phrase spread like wildfire, not from governments, not from militaries, but from the broken, the left-behinds, the orphans, the abandoned men who had once fought and been told it didn't matter. Now it mattered. The Ghost made it matter. One night, or whatever passed for night, in deep space, Bren sat alone in the Revenant's lower deck. A bottle in his hand, a pistol in the other. He didn't drink often. Not anymore. But tonight felt quiet. Too quiet. He looked at the pistol like it was asking him something. That familiar question. You done yet? His thumb hovered over the safety. Then the door creaked. Raoul walked in, leaning on the frame, a healing scar across his cheek. You thinking about him? Always. Raoul walked over, dropped into the chair across from him. You know, he said, I used to think Ghost wasn't real. Bren chuckled. He wasn't. Not until they made him. Raoul nodded. He could have run. After the bastion. After Trevor's. Hell, he could have given up back in the rift. But he didn't. Bren leaned back, sighed. He was dying the entire time. Still moved like a god. They drank in silence. Not as warriors, not as legends, just men who'd seen too much and lost too many. Months later, the galaxy took a breath. A cautious, uneasy breath. A ceasefire formed between the Krek and the remaining human enclaves. Not through negotiation, not through diplomacy. Through fear. They remembered what Ghost did to a warlord with nothing but bare hands, what he did to soldiers bred for killing, what he did when he had nothing left but anger. And they remembered the ship, the Revenant, still out there, still hunting. One day, Bren received a message. No origin, no signature, just a single line. He inspired us. We are many now. Attached was a short video, grainy footage of a Krek listening post being raided by a squad in black armor with red ghost symbols painted across their chest. They moved with precision, with fury, and they didn't speak a word. The file ended. Bren stared at the screen for a long time. Then he stood, walked to the bridge, and keyed in new coordinates. Where to? Talon asked. Doesn't matter, Bren said. Raoul smirked. Long as it burns. The ship